You're not family. You weren't invited. 5 words that shattered 23 years of motherhood in an instant. I was standing in their doorway, holding a gift I'd saved weeks to buy, watching my son avoid my eyes while his wife delivered the blow that would change everything. Most people think rejection like this destroys you, leaves you broken and bitter. But what happened next proved that sometimes the most painful moments don't break us, they forge us into something unbreakable. If you've ever given your all to people who decided it still wasn't enough, take a moment, breathe, and press that like button. If someone once looked you in the eye and treated your history, your love, your years, like they were nothing more than inconvenience, leave a comment. Tell me your story. You are not alone. This isn't just about revenge, it's about reclaiming your name, your worth, your voice. Subscribe if you believe dignity is not something to beg for, and stay with me, because what comes next isn't rage. It's clarity, the kind that rises slowly, silently, until there's no turning back. My name is Margot Ellis. I turned 66 this past winter. Snow was falling outside my window when I sat alone with a cup of lukewarm tea, thinking about how strange it felt to grow older in a house once filled with noise. I used to be someone who had a purpose every minute of the day. Raising a son will do that. Especially when you do it alone. Robert, my husband, died when Derek was 8. A heart attack. Sudden. One moment we were talking about planting hydrangeas, and the next, I was telling a boy that his father wouldn't be coming home. I don't think you ever forget the sound your child makes when his world breaks. That sound stayed with me. It was what made me promise myself I would never let him feel that kind of loss again. Derek was bright. Thoughtful. A quiet boy who asked questions no one else did. He never gave me trouble. He just wanted to feel safe. I worked late nights, took on summer jobs at the library, and borrowed from my own retirement just to keep up with school supplies and his tuition dreams. I never expected anything in return. Only to be part of the life I helped build. When Derek met Tessa, he was 29. Fresh out of graduate school, already working long hours in corporate finance. She walked in like someone who had never been told no. Blonde, poised, careful with her words. At first, I tried to like her. I told myself she was just independent. But from the beginning, she watched everything I did. She corrected me when I told stories about Derek's childhood. She said I interrupted too much. She once asked if I could call ahead before stopping by, even though I lived 10 minutes away. Still, I kept trying. I baked her favorite bread after their first child was born. I offered to help with laundry or groceries. Each time, I was told thank you with a smile that never reached her eyes. Then came the slow pulling away. Holiday plans were always with her family. My name was left off RSVPs. Derek started deferring to her on everything. I could see it happening but didn't know how to stop it without causing more damage. The first time I wasn't invited to a family dinner, I chalked it up to a mistake. The second time, Tessa said they were keeping things small. By the third time, I understood. I was being phased out. But I still held on. I thought maybe if I stayed kind, if I stayed available, they'd come back around. It got worse after my grandson was born. I only found out about his arrival through a photo Derek sent hours later. I offered to come visit, but Tessa told me they needed space to bond as a new family. I respected that, even though it hurt. I dropped off gifts at the door. Tiny onesies, picture books, little notes with soft words. No one ever thanked me. Then came the real twist of the knife. I heard from a friend that Tessa had shared a post online, a meme about boomer mothers who can't let go, with laughing emojis underneath. It wasn't subtle. She knew I'd see it. I felt the burn in my chest, not just from the words, but from knowing Derek didn't defend me. Still, I kept showing up. At birthdays. At holidays. Each time, I was greeted with politeness so hollow it echoed. I remember once handing Tessa a hand-knit sweater I'd made for the baby. She glanced at it, then set it down next to the trash bin as she moved to another conversation. It was humiliating. But I told myself to hold on for Derek's sake. For my grandson. That is, until the day of the birthday party. The one where I stood at the front door with a carefully wrapped necklace, only to be told I wasn't family. Not invited. Not welcome. And just like that, years of sacrifice became invisible. But not for long. After the party, I waited for Derek to call. To explain. To apologize. Something. I told myself maybe Tessa had acted out of stress or spite, and he hadn't known. But the silence that followed was louder than anything she could have said. A week passed. Then two. I left one message, then another, my voice softer each time. The only response came through a text, "We just need some space right now." That was it. Not even a greeting. I tried to hold on to my dignity. I reminded myself not to beg. I told myself they would come around. That surely, no son would turn his back completely on the person who raised him. But when Christmas came and went without an invitation, without a card, without even a picture of my grandson, I knew something had changed. And not by accident. By design. I still remember sitting at my kitchen table one morning, sipping weak coffee while looking through old family albums. Derek's second birthday. His graduation photo. The hospital bracelet from the day he was born. I kept wondering how we had gone from bedtime stories and birthday cakes to being strangers under the same sky. It wasn't just about exclusion. It was about being erased. I made one more attempt. I bought a small card, wrote a few lines in careful handwriting, and left it at their doorstep. It simply said, "I love you both. I miss my grandson. My door is always open." A week later, I saw a post on Tessa's Facebook page, a picture of the card with the caption, "When people just don't take a hint." The comments were full of laughing emojis and passive-aggressive jokes. Derek had liked the post. That was when something inside me went quiet. Not broken. Not angry. Just still. That stillness followed me for days. I stopped calling. I stopped hoping. I started walking every evening, through the same neighborhood I once helped them move into. I noticed how much had changed. New cars in the driveway. Fresh renovations. A new patio built with the savings I had once handed over without a second thought. I had helped co-sign the mortgage on that house. A gesture made years ago when Derek was fresh out of school and struggling to qualify. It was meant to be temporary. A kindness. A bridge. Now, it was part of the life I wasn't allowed to enter. Then came the envelope. A plain white letter delivered by post. Inside was a formal request to release my name from the deed. Tessa and Derek wanted sole ownership of the property, citing financial restructuring and future flexibility. It was cold, impersonal, and signed by hand. It wasn't just a legal request. It was a message. The final one. I sat there holding the letter for several minutes, my tea going cold. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of clarity. They didn't want my name on the house. They didn't want my face in their home. They didn't want my presence in their lives. That afternoon, I walked into my bedroom, opened the drawer where I kept old papers, and found every financial receipt tied to that house. The original down payment record. The bank emails. My lawyer's name written on a yellowed notepad. For the first time in years, I didn't feel grief. I felt precision. A clean, level sense of direction. They had made a decision. And now, so would I. It wasn't about revenge in the way most people think of it. I didn't want to ruin them. I didn't want to hurt them. But I wanted them to understand the difference between boundaries and betrayal, between space and cruelty. And I wanted to remind them that erasing someone doesn't mean they vanish. Sometimes, the ones you try to silence are the ones who watch you crumble. Quietly. Thoroughly. It took losing my place at that table for me to finally see the room clearly. And once I did, I stopped knocking. I began measuring. I waited 2 days before making the first call. Not to Derek. Not to Tessa. I called Clara Jennings, my lawyer of 23 years. Clara was sharp, discreet, and never asked questions she didn't need answers to. I told her everything. From the mortgage co-signing to the recent letter asking me to relinquish ownership. She didn't react with outrage or sympathy. She simply said, "Let's get to work." Clara pulled the original deed and confirmed what I already knew. My name wasn't just on the paperwork. My financial contributions were documented in detail. Every wire transfer. Every bank draft. Every record of co-ownership. The house was not theirs. Not fully. Not legally. Not morally. With Clara's help, we placed a lien on the property. I refused to sign the deed release. Then we quietly flagged their mortgage lender, blocking the refinance process they had initiated without informing me. Tessa had been trying to pull equity from the home for new upgrades. That pipeline dried up in a week. After that, I requested quarterly property tax reports. I needed to know what they were spending, what they were hiding. Clara and I reviewed every line together. Meanwhile, I started reworking my will. I had previously listed Derek and my grandson as beneficiaries. With quiet resolve, I removed them. Instead, I created a living trust to fund scholarships for young women who had lost their parents early in life. A way to honor Robert. A way to close that circle with dignity. But legal actions were only part of it. What I needed most was clarity. So I began documenting. I created a folder on my desktop, saved every screenshot, every message, every social media post Tessa had made that reflected the gaslighting and exclusion. I printed them. Filed them. Backed them up. Her words would no longer float away like smoke. They would have weight. At the same time, I began pulling back from old patterns. No more emotional bargaining. No more hoping for reconciliation. I stopped attending neighborhood events where I might run into them. I declined mutual invitations. I let absence speak in ways words never could. What surprised me most was the peace that came with detachment. I began volunteering at the community center twice a week. I signed up for a watercolor class. I planted herbs in my backyard, letting the soil stain my hands in a way that reminded me I was still here. Still capable of growth. I never announced what I was doing. I didn't threaten or confront. I simply became quieter. Sharper. Focused. They thought I would fold. But I had stopped bending. Let them think the silence meant surrender. In truth, it meant preparation. The first sign that something had shifted came when Derek left a voicemail. His tone was strained, his words oddly formal. He said they had hit a small snag with the bank and needed my signature to move forward with refinancing. I didn't call back. Instead, I forwarded the message to Clara. She sent them a brief legal notice. No signature would be given. All future communication would go through counsel. A week later, Tessa showed up at my door. She didn't ring the bell. Just stood there, arms crossed, a tight smile on her face. I opened the door halfway. She asked if we could speak privately, said she was willing to find common ground. I looked at her without expression and asked if she remembered telling me I wasn't family. She shifted, said it had been a moment of stress. I told her that moments have consequences. Then I closed the door, gently. They didn't realize how much I had already unraveled. Through a quiet HOA inquiry, I reported the unapproved additions they had made to the backyard. A large patio and outdoor kitchen, built without proper permits. It triggered a formal review. Their request for retroactive approval was denied. The additions were non-compliant. The city gave them two options: pay a fine and remove the structures, or face escalating penalties. They chose the fine. But it stung. Next came the unraveling of Tessa's professional world. I had saved screenshots of her online posts, those mocking elders, criticizing outdated parents who refused to disappear. I sent them anonymously to the HR department of the school where she worked, along with comments she made under her real name. The tone was never vindictive. Just factual. Attached. Timestamped. Documented. Her promotion, one she had been vocal about pursuing, was quietly withdrawn. She wasn't fired, but word spread. Reputation, in her world, was currency. And she had just gone bankrupt. Meanwhile, Derek tried to access a joint investment account we had set up years earlier, one meant as a backup fund for emergencies. I had removed his name 2 months prior. He emailed me asking why. I replied with one line: "You wanted space. I'm giving it to you." They began to scramble. Tensions rose. Tessa's posts grew defensive, vague comments about betrayal and bitterness. Derek looked thinner the last time I saw him from a distance, standing outside the grocery store. He didn't see me. I didn't approach. Each piece fell quietly. Not with fireworks, but with silence that unsettled. They had built their comfort on my blind love. They never expected me to reclaim it. And now, piece by piece, their foundation was cracking. I didn't celebrate. I didn't share the story with anyone. I simply watched, steady and still, as the life they tried to carve me out of slowly began to shrink around them. Justice doesn't always arrive with a loud verdict. Sometimes, it walks in soft shoes. The house went up for sale in early spring. The listing appeared quietly, no announcement, no photos of family in the background, just empty rooms and careful staging. I recognized every corner. I had helped paint those walls. I remembered where Derek fell asleep with a fever on the couch, the marks on the baseboard I measured his height against when he was 12. All of it now scrubbed clean for strangers. They moved into a smaller rental across town. No outdoor kitchen. No luxury car in the driveway. Tessa took on freelance work to cover expenses. Derek began working longer hours. They faded from the neighborhood, from the events they used to host, from the circles that once orbited around their curated image. Derek reached out one last time. An email. He said he wanted to talk, that things had gotten out of hand. He didn't mention apologies. Only asked if I could help them stabilize again. I never replied. I did attend my grandson's school recital. From the back row. I arrived early, sat quietly. When he took the stage, our eyes met. He smiled. Just once. That was enough. Walking out, I felt no anger. No triumph. Just peace. I had stopped trying to be part of their picture. And in doing so, I had finally seen the full frame. Freedom came not from taking anything away, but from choosing what to carry forward. I chose silence. I chose distance. I chose myself. When someone decides you are disposable, they expect you to crumble. To chase, to plead, to shrink. But what they never see coming is stillness. The kind that forms when the begging stops and the boundaries rise. I spent years believing love meant giving until there was nothing left. But now I understand, love without respect is erosion. Slow. Quiet. Until one day, you wake up and realize you have disappeared from your own life. I didn't vanish. I reappeared. In the quiet of a garden I planted with my own hands. In laughter shared with people who never asked me to earn my place. Tessa's words still echo sometimes. You're not family. But now I know better. Family isn't who you serve without question. It's who sees you, even when you're not convenient. And I see myself more clearly than ever. Have you ever been pushed aside by someone you once called family? Told that your place, your presence, your love didn't matter? Share your story in the comments. Your voice deserves to be heard, and you are not alone. If you believe that respect should never be conditional, and that dignity has no expiration, hit the like button. Subscribe for more stories where silence holds power, and justice unfolds with grace, not noise. Because revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes, it is the quiet decision to stop knocking, turn around, and build something stronger on your own. And when you do, you don't just heal. You rise.